Hi folks, today we're going to talk about a project I recently completed, a Santa Fe GP30u from an older LifeLike Proto 2000 model. Now I've always liked the GP30 in that it has unique lines, both on its cab, where you see the rounded corners with the hump in the middle, and on its long hood, where you see the hump in the back. The first step on this project was a major overhaul of the chassis itself. I wanted to replace all trucks and the motor, as well as all the drive shafts, with Kato. So I basically transplanted the entire drive system from an F7 into the chassis of the GP30. This required cutting off the weight behind the cab and in front of the rear axle, as well as grinding the chassis itself so that the motor could sit in flush and so that the drive axles could be straight to the wheels. The result is a very smooth and quietly running drive. Of course, the problem, as you can see, there's just not a lot of weight left, so I had to add some back in. I soldered a ½ ounce of lead to the rear weight of the locomotive. I applied another ½ ounce to the top of the motor itself. Now, because the Kato motors all had their own circuit boards, I decided to go ahead and use it, which gave room for another ½ ounce of weight underneath, and also a convenient place to mount the TCS Wow decoder. I pounded another ½ ounce of lead into a blade and mounted it under the radiator fans on the top of the long hood. After this, the locomotive was at a pretty good 14 ounces of weight. Next up were the lighting effects. I wanted the headlights to both have LEDs behind them, and I wanted the number boards to light independently, and I wanted the beacon to operate. I also wanted the cab to remain dark. This was achieved by mounting 3 LEDs in a very tight space toward the front of the cab and covering up the light leaks with black paint and shrink tubing. Once everything was functioning on the inside, it was time to close the locomotive and detail the exterior. Here you can see I've plated over the marker lights, and I've cut little chunks out of the corners of the pilots in order to provide space for the crews to reach across and access the new coupler bars that I installed, made from brass wire that I twisted into shape. Now the MU hoses and the MU cable are actually 30 gauge wire that I cut to length and then highlighted with silver and installed onto the locomotive with super glue. The pilot itself has grab irons instead of steps. The original GP30 from Proto 2000 had steps, but the Santa Fe removed those as part of the rebuilding process, as they decided it would be safer for the crews to stand on the steps of the locomotive rather than on the platform in front of the pilot. I modified the trucks of the locomotive to remove the outside brake bracket, which is something the Santa Fe did in rebuilding their locomotives. I added a speed recorder cable and brass cab shades. I added similar pilot details to the rear of the locomotive. I plated over the number boards and added number decals. I painted the steps on the walkway yellow to match prototype. Now you can also see that I added cab mirrors. I also added a cab interior with 3 chairs and a control stand and a back wall, a custom mounted horn, beacon, air conditioning, antenna mount and platform, and silver painted fans, or the blades. Now let's take a moment with the lights off to show the lighting effects. Here are the number boards. Now they don't quite flicker like this in real life. I think that's a camera effect. The beacon, of course, is working. Very slight light bleed into the headlight, but almost nowhere else. And there's the nice bright headlights. Oh yeah, they're dimmable. They were actually dim. So this is the nice bright headlights now. And now let's hear the locomotive come to life with the TCS Wow Sound card. Let's take a moment to look at the slow speed control of the TCS decoder. And here you can see it's going about 1 scale mile per hour or less at 1 speed step. This is actually slower than what my AccuTrack speed recorder can read. Now throttling up a bit. Well, that concludes this presentation. Hope you enjoyed it and continue modeling. Bye.